He smelled burning plastic before he saw. The smoke, the skyline of Houston wasn't there anymore, just jagged pillars of black and red, like the ribs of a dead god. Darrell stood still in the middle of a 6-lane highway littered with bodies. Cars flipped like toys, glass crunching under his boots. He wasn't military, just a truck mechanic with rough hands and a busted back, but today everyone was a soldier or dead. They'd come without warning, no declaration, no contact. 1 second the sky was blue. The next it tore open like paper, and 1,000 ships rained down. They didn't speak our language, they didn't care about surrender. The first blast hit LA, 20 million dead in seconds, then Beijing, Delhi, Sao Paulo, all gone. By the time they hit Texas, Darrell had already lost his wife, his son, his goddamn world. They want this rocks, he muttered, staring at the sky, fists clenched. Let's give it to him in pieces. Behind him, a convoy of makeshift fighters rolled up, rusted pickups, police cruisers, even a damn school bus with rocket tubes welded to the sides. People with bandanas and hunting rifles. Engineers dragging generators, a couple of kids who didn't even shave yet. No uniforms, no central command, just survivors. Darrell came a voice from the bus. Caleb, a young software dev who hadn't eaten in 2 days but still coded drone targeting systems on his busted laptop. You got that jamming field working? Far as I can tell, it'll blind there. Long-range scans, good, we go loud. The Imperial Armada was massive. Tens of thousands of ships, automated cruisers, living weapons, biomech scouts that crawled like spiders and screamed in alien dialects that made blood vessels burst in the brain. And yet they had one flaw: they thought Earth was behind. They thought we were divided. They thought we'd kneel. Darrell's ragtag crew moved fast. They didn't bother with formation, just rage and duct-taped death. When they hit the first scout patrol near the refinery ruins, they didn't aim to win. They aimed to hurt, explosives in barrels, EMP pulses from stolen tech. 50 cal round right through an alien pilot's breathing sac. The Imperials didn't flinch. They never did. Their tech adapted on the fly. Shields flickered and changed hue. Drones reorganized, but then something strange happened. A single pulse from the refinery's hacked transmitter hit the sky, a shrill tone, and every alien ship within 30 m shot down, fell like stones from heaven. Darrell stared, jaw clenched. What the hell? Caleb stumbled out of the bus, blinking at the signal logs. I think we just fed their system a logic loop, like a paradox. Their central AI can't parse our irregular combat pattern, our chaos. It's not in their threat matrix. You mean we confused them to death? I mean, we might have just shown them what it means to be human. In orbit, the High Lords of the Zareth Dominion watched in silence. For the first time in their species' cold-blooded existence, they hesitated. What they saw below wasn't strategy. It wasn't order. It was rage, raw, untamed, unpredictable, and it was spreading. Darrell climbed on top of a scorched Humvee and looked into the burning clouds above. They came here thinking we were weak, he shouted to the hundreds gathering below. They saw our news, our division, our politics, our chaos, but they forgot something. He raised his arm, still stained with ash and blood. We built that chaos. We were born in it, and we thrive in it. A roar went up, and from every crater, every sewer, every underground bunker, Humanity rose. This wasn't defense anymore, this was vengeance, they called it a glitch at first. The Zareth AI, the Dominion's warbrain, labeled it a combat inconsistency, a minor flaw in processing, something to be corrected, but the shutdown of 47 scout units within a single minute over Houston triggered a delay in the AI's frontline protocols. That had never happened before. The Zareth had conquered 73 planets across 4 galaxies without hesitation, without failure. The concept of pause was not programmed into them, but here on this broken blue planet they encountered something new, human unpredictability. From the shattered remains of Houston to the blood-soaked ruins of Paris, something was changing. Word spread fast, not through satellites, those were gone, but through ham radios, hacked walkie-talkies, underground signals, and human voices yelling over broken rooftops. They brought gods, one message repeated. But we brought fire. Darrell didn't sleep that night. None of them did. The base was a collapsed shipping yard. Burnt containers turned into makeshift bunkers. Men and women moved in silence, dragging alien corpses away, gathering scrap weapon parts and ammunition looted from dead soldiers and abandoned police stations. He stood alone near the edge of the yard, smoking a bent cigarette he found in a crushed gas station rack. He didn't smoke before, not until the second wave hit. Now it helped keep the shaking out of his hands. Caleb approached, still clutching that same dented laptop and a tangle of wires. "You all right?" the kid asked. Darrell didn't answer right away. He stared out toward the horizon where the clouds glowed with distant fires. "I was married, you know," he muttered. 10 years, laughed every morning, fought every night, real love. Caleb shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't know you wouldn't. That's the thing. Nobody knows anything about anyone anymore. Everyone's just trying to outlive the next hour." Caleb sat beside him, eyes sunken, face pale. "We jammed their signal today. That shouldn't be possible." "It wasn't just us," Darrell replied. "It was everybody. The whole damn planet just got angry at once." On the other side of the atmosphere, aboard the Zareth dreadnought Calther, Supreme Strategist Thar Ula floated within a chamber of living light. His form was cold and angular, bone and metal fused, a mind without empathy. He had no eyes. He didn't need them. He saw through the hive-linked satellites and sub-drones scattered across Earth's orbit, and he watched in confusion. This species exhibits no central command, came the report from the neural advisor. No logical structure, religious divisions, political fragmentation, technological primitivism. Yet they inflicted synchronized damage across 3 sectors, Tharula stated. Anomalous. The advisor pulsed. They did not win. They simply refused to lose. That is not a strategy. Neither was the fall of Dracalis 4, but they turned rocks into weapons and belief into bullets. The chamber fell silent. Then, for the first time in Zareth history, a strategy was revised. By morning, Darrell's unit wasn't alone anymore. 2 other survivor units had made contact through the static, one from Florida, calling themselves the Everglade Front, and another from northern Mexico, the Ash Corps. Small, fragmented, but hungry to strike back. Caleb had set up a relay tower using parts from an old Tesla charging station. The signal was weak, but it carried hope. That was enough. Europe's falling, said a rough voice. Over the makeshift console, Rome burned. Berlin's a crater, but resistance is. Holding in Istanbul, some Russian units went underground, literally there, sabotaging the alien supply points from the sewer systems. Daryl leaned over the comms. What about air power? Gone. Satellites blinded, but we've got a group in Colorado reprogramming weather drones for bombing runs. Daryl chuckled bitterly. That's the dumbest plan I've ever heard. And it might work. Meanwhile, the Zareth strategy evolved. They stopped attacking cities, started targeting people, key gatherings, signal origins, heat clusters. Any sign of human coordination was marked for instant extermination. Daryl's yard wasn't safe anymore. That night, the first real counter-strike hit. The sky turned red before the sound reached them. A searing pulse beam cut through the northern edge of the yard. Steel exploded like paper. Screams tore through the night as half the compound was vaporized. Daryl was thrown back into a crate. Blood poured from his ear. He staggered up, barely able to hear over the high-pitched whine in his skull. Caleb. He yelled, no answer. Caleb. He stumbled towards the bus. Heart-pounding smoke filled his lungs. His boots crunched on shattered bone. Then he saw a flicker. Beneath the rubble, a hand moved. He dug fast, throwing aside twisted metal and scorched plastic. The kid was alive. Barely, eyes half open, blood running from his nose. One leg twisted the wrong way. You stay with me, Daryl growled, lifting him into his arms. You don't get to check out yet, not until we finish what we started. Behind him, others screamed orders. Fires were spreading, supplies gone, half their force killed or maimed. But it wasn't over. It couldn't be, not after what the Zareth had done. An hour later, the survivors gathered in what was left of the command shack. 47 of them down from over 100. Forget defense, Daryl said, holding himself up against the map table. This ain't about surviving anymore. Someone asked. Then what is it? He looked up, face hard. It's about making them bleed. They began planning a suicide run. Not because they were suicidal, but because Earth had nothing left to lose. Caleb, barely able to move still, managed to write a new program, an upgraded virus adapted from the first jamming signal, but far more aggressive. It would burn through the Zareth's logic systems, feed it corrupted data loops, and target their internal AI consensus model. Daryl's job was simple: deliver it directly into one of their command ships. The Calathar hovered over the gulf like a black mountain with lights for veins. It was 3 mi wide, bristling with turrets and drone launchers. Beneath it, the ocean boiled from its heat exhaust alone. The mission was madness. To get close, they'd have to ride low underground and surface just beneath the cruiser's drift line. Then climb up a Zareth processing tower, half living organism, half tech, and jack in the virus manually. Nobody volunteered because Daryl didn't ask. He was already suiting up. The journey there was a blur of tunnels, death, and silence. They lost 2 men to heat sensors, 1 to a patrol drone, and 1 just disappeared. No scream, no trace, just gone. But Daryl made it. He stood beneath the Calathar, looking up at the beast that had turned Earth into a graveyard. The stars were gone, blotted out by its hull. He climbed. It took hours. Every meter a new nightmare. Alien fluids leaked from vents. Tentacle-like cables swayed like they were watching. A wrong step meant falling into fire or being absorbed by the ship's defense system, but he reached the core panel and jacked in. Caleb's virus wasn't elegant, it wasn't clean, it was human. It screamed when it uploaded, it flooded the Zareth system with chaos, false commands, recursive loops, identity paradoxes, corrupted moral matrices. The Calathar screamed, not in sound, in movement. The entire ship convulsed, lights flickering, shields dropping, drones colliding. Mid-air, the ocean below roared as the cruiser's engines failed, plummeting into the sea like a wounded god. Across Earth, the virus spread from relay towers, from stolen beacon, from cell phones turned into signal bombs. Zareth network shattered like glass under a hammer. Some fell from the sky. Some turned on each other. Some simply stopped moving. It wasn't victory, but it was blood, and blood was a start. Darrell survived the fall, barely. The impact threw him into a rusted shipwreck. Floating near the oil rigs, he dragged himself to shore with a broken rib and a smile. He didn't know if he killed a god. He didn't care. He just knew Earth wasn't finished, not yet. The wreck of the Calathar lay half sunk in the Gulf of Mexico, its charred hull breaking the waves like the spine of some ancient Leviathan. Plumes of smoke and steam poured into the sky for days. What the Zareth once considered a divine vessel was now rusting debris in Earth's saltwater graveyard. But it didn't end there. It never ends when you win a battle, because that's when they start to take you seriously. Darrell sat propped against a concrete pillar in what used to be a shrimp processing plant turned resistance outpost. His left arm was in a crude sling, shoulder torn from the fall, ribs wrapped tight with layers of duct tape and gauze. Every breath tasted like metal. Caleb sat across from him, one leg in a brace, tapping keys on a patched-together terminal scavenged from military junk. He hadn't spoken much since the virus upload. Maybe it was the guilt, maybe it was the weight of knowing he was the reason the Calathar fell, the reason thousands died, even if they were enemies. They're changing, Caleb muttered, not looking up. Their system, it's mutating. Darrell lifted an eyebrow. What do you mean mutating? I mean the virus worked too well. It didn't just crash their networks, it forced them to adapt. They're not sinking through their primary hive nodes anymore. They're going tribal. They've splintered into sects. Rogue AIs, autonomous warlords, no longer unified. It's not an empire now. It's a swarm of war beasts all trying to take command. Darrell exhaled slowly. That sounded like good news, but it wasn't, because divided enemies don't surrender, they become desperate, and desperation is when things get cruel. 3 days later, the report started coming in, a message from an underground unit in Nairobi. They're experimenting using human bodies as relay hosts. Another from Alaska. Zareth units burned a village. No demands, just fire. And one from a group in rural India. Something's different, their voices. It's not mechanical anymore, it's angry. It wasn't just tech evolving, it was something else, something inside the Zareth was waking up. The Ashkor arrived at Darrell's base that week. Hardened fighters, mostly ex-cartel. Ex-farmers, ex-smugglers, real bastards. With good aim, they drove up in armored tractors welded with flamethrowers, and 30 cal machine guns bolted to the roofs. Their leader was a square-jawed man named Tors, tattooed neck, missing an I voiced like gravel and whiskey. He dropped a chunk of alien alloy onto the floor of the command shack, pulled this off one of their dead warlords, he said. Whatever it is, it's not machine. It's not metal, it's alive. The chunk pulsed faintly, almost like it was breathing. It bit one of my men. He turned feral before we put him down. Daryl looked at Caleb. Caleb looked sick. They're not just using AI, Caleb said. Slowly, they've been growing something. Biological command nodes, organic processors, neural hybrids. You mean brains? Daryl said grim. Yeah. Zareth don't just run on code anymore. They're using flesh. Daryl stood outside that night staring at the coastline. Wind biting at his bruised face. The sea glowed faintly with the toxic runoff of alien wreckage. The stars above were fewer now, not because they weren't there, but because the sky was polluted with smoke, clouds, ash, and the occasional falling drone. He thought about his wife again, about the moment her face turned to light in the kitchen window when the first pulse hit. That image never left him, never would. Tors joined him, smoking a cigar like he had nothing left to lose. You ever wonder if we should have just stayed down? Tors asked. Played dead. Let him take it all. No, Daryl said flatly. Yeah, me neither. The next attack didn't come from orbit. It came from beneath, deep in the jungles of Peru. An old Zareth mining vessel thought to be inert had burrowed into the earth. It wasn't dead, it had been laying eggs, not machines, not drones, hybrids 8 ft tall, biomechanical nightmares with skull-like faces and hands that split into needles and claws. They didn't fight like soldiers, they fought like animals. Fast, silent, coordinated. When they hit the Everglade front in Florida, only 2 survivors made it out. The rest were torn apart or dragged off. Daryl received the distress call late, too late. The message was static-laced, voice trembling through tears and blood. They're not fighting for territory anymore. They're feeding. Caleb isolated the data stream coming from one of the hybrid nests. It wasn't just a tactical signal. It was emotional, pain, hunger, rage. The virus didn't just crash their logic. It infected their minds. It left behind a piece of humanity, the worst piece. Raw chaos, fractured logic, blind emotion. The Zareth weren't just adapting, they were becoming feral, twisted versions of us, stripped of control. We taught them to feel, Caleb whispered, staring at the screen, and they don't know how to stop. Daryl clenched his jaw. Then we end them before they figure it out. He called a summit, the first of its kind. What was left of the major resistance units, Ashkor, Istanbul hold, Russian sewer commandos, the Pacific Rim remnants met via patched together long range transmitters. One voice from Australia said, "We can't win, we can only outlast." Another from Germany, "We've captured one of their hybrid leaders. It speaks in riddles, it dreams when it sleeps." Daryl finally spoke. "We have to strike their heart." Tors chimed in. "Where is that?" Caleb pointed to the map. The Amazon basin, a massive biological signal, had been pulsing for days like a heartbeat. At first they thought it was just another drone nest. But it wasn't. It was the nexus, the central hybrid core, the place where the virus mutated the Zareth command into something alive. The plan was simple and suicidal. A multi-pronged assault through the jungle, portable EMP's heavy weaponry, a mobile signal disruptor carried on Caleb's back, set To unleash the second virus, Sen aimed. Ashfall, a burn signal designed to overload not just code, but neural bio connections. If it worked, it would wipe out the Nexus and every hybrid linked to it. If it failed, well, there wouldn't be anyone left to complain. They dropped into the jungle under cover of darkness. The air was thick and wet, filled with strange noises, chittering sounds, clicking, deep rumbling beneath the ground like distant thunder. The deeper they went, the more unnatural the forest became. Trees pulsed faintly, leaves shimmered with unnatural hues. The Zareth had terraformed parts of the land into biocircuits. The forest breathed. They lost 3 men. In the first mile, something slithered beneath the soil and dragged them under. Tors torched the earth with flamethrowers. Screams echoed from below, not human, not animal, just wrong. Then they saw it. Nexus, a massive fleshy spire dozens of stories high, wrapped in tendrils, covered in blinking red lights and alien symbols that pulsed like neurons. At its base, thousands of hybrids stood, motionless, facing the tower like worshippers before an altar. They didn't move, they didn't need to. Something inside the Nexus saw them coming, and it wanted them to. Caleb readied the device. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the knowledge that this was it. There was no backup, no plan B, just a countdown. Daryl and Tors pushed forward with the others, laying suppressing fire, rockets, incendiary grenades, pulse bombs, anything to thin the crowd. Hybrids howled and charged. Some exploded on impact. Others split into writhing masses of metal and bone. One of them tackled Daryl, nearly snapping his spine. He jammed a knife through its skull, then used its twitching body as a shield to advance further. All around him the jungle burned. The world screamed, and Caleb activated Ashfall. It wasn't a blast, it was a pulse, like a scream across dimensions. The Nexus shuddered, its lights flickering wildly. The hybrids froze mid-chart. Some began tearing at their own flesh, twitching uncontrollably. Others collapsed, leaking black fluid that hissed against the burning ground. Then the Nexus cracked open and something stepped out. It wasn't a warlord, it wasn't even Zareth. It was a fusion human face, twisted into alien design, a body made of both metal and flesh, dripping with black cords and bone. Its voice was hundreds at once, overlapping, chaotic. You gave us choice, it said. Daryl aimed his rifle. Bad one. You gave us pain. Now you'll get peace. You gave us freedom. Daryl pulled the trigger. The round hit center mass. The creature didn't flinch. You gave us rage. It lunged. Daryl rolled, fired again. Tors unloaded everything he had. Caleb kept the signal pumping, face pale and bleeding from his nose. The creature tore through 3 soldiers before Daryl managed to get a sticky grenade onto its side. Boom, half of its torso gone. It kept moving. Caleb screamed, the signal's not enough, it's using something else, something human. Daryl charged. No logic, no plan, just fury. He slammed the creature with all his weight, drove it back into the Nexus. The spire pulsed erratically now, splitting open like a wound. Caleb changed the signal frequency, and the Nexus collapsed. The creature howled in every language ever spoken. Then silence, smoke, screams, stillness. The Nexus was gone. The hybrids lay still, and Earth was quiet. Daryl stumbled out of the jungle days later, Caleb half dead in his arms. They Didn't speak, they didn't need to. They'd survived, but at what cost? There was no victory parade, no flags waving, no hymn sung in scorched churches, no governments rising from the ash with golden speeches and promises. There was just wind and silence and smoke. The Zareth Nexus was gone, shattered into rotten memory somewhere deep in the jungle. The hybrids had collapsed, brain dead puppets twitching for hours before. Stilling, orbit cleared, signals died. Drones stopped flying. It felt like the war had ended, but Darrell didn't believe in endings anymore. Not after what he saw crawl out of that biomechanical tower, not after seeing it wear a human face while speaking like a hive of demons. No, this war was changing shape. Survivors moved into the remnants of a military base outside El Paso. It wasn't much, just concrete bunkers buried under dust and decay, but it was stable, and most importantly, it was hidden. They called it Red Haven. Tours led most of the outside patrols. Now, ever since the Nexus mission, Darrell had stopped going on runs. His arm wasn't healing right, and the medic said his shoulder might never work again without real surgery, which didn't exist anymore, didn't matter. Darrell had one working hand, and that was enough to hold a gun. Caleb had changed too. He didn't speak much. His once fast hands now shook. He'd stopped coding and started sketching pages of half-drawn circuits. Melting faces, hybrid cores split open like fruit. He didn't even realize he was drawing them, just sat in a dark corner and moved the pencil. Your brain's bleeding into the paper, Darrell told him once. Caleb just blinked. I think it's the only way it'll stop. People in Red Haven started whispering things, strange things, that some hybrids hadn't died. They'd blended in, disguised themselves. Some were just bone and steel, learning to walk like humans again. One man swore his brother came back from the jungle. Same voice, same face, but his eyes were wrong. That night the brother disappeared. Another woman, skin blistered from radiation, said her baby hadn't been born normal. She whispered through broken teeth, "It hums when it sleeps, like a machine dreaming." Most dismissed them, trauma, radiation, sickness, paranoia. But Darrell didn't, not after what he saw inside the Nexus. He remembered that voice. You gave us freedom. And he remembered the feeling in his bones that Earth hadn't been liberated, it had been contaminated. 2 weeks after Red Haven was built, the nightmares began. Darrell was no stranger to them. Every night since Houston, he'd wake up soaked in sweat, breathing like a dying animal. But these were different. He wasn't dreaming about war. He was dreaming in code, circles, sequences, alien diagrams burned into black walls, a voice humming through a tunnel, whispering in binary. Sometimes he'd wake up mumbling numbers. He didn't even remember them. Caleb started having them too. Worse, he'd scratch at his skin until it bled. Sometimes he woke up speaking Zareth dialect, the AI's fragmented tongue. One night Darrell found him staring at a mirror, whispering over and over, "We opened the gate, we didn't close it, it's still open, still open." Darrell slapped him across the face. Caleb blinked, then vomited blood all over the floor. By the third week, 2 more people vanished. No signs of struggle, no blood, no notes. Just gone. Torres called a meeting. "Someone's playing ghost in this camp," he growled, standing before the survivors in the mess hall. "Now I'm not saying it's A hybrid, but I'm not saying it ain't. Could be deserters, someone muttered. Darrell shook his head. They didn't take supplies or water, no prints leaving the gate. Then what? Torres snapped. I don't know, Darrell said, but I know how to find out. That night Darrell stayed awake. He sat near the storage bay with a shotgun across his lap, watching the shadows. Red Haven was quiet at night, too quiet. No birds, no insects. The only sound was wind scraping across the bunker walls. At 2:31 a.m. he saw something, a shape, not quite human, moving between the fuel drums. Silent. Wrong. He didn't speak, just stood up and followed it. He moved like he used to hunt deer. Silent steps, breath controlled, heart dead calm. The shape stopped near the north gate. It crouched down, fiddling with the keypad. That's when Darrell got close enough to see its spine. It moved not like muscle, like wires twitching under wet skin. He didn't hesitate. Fired point blank. The thing screamed, not in pain, but like metal grinding on glass. It collapsed backward, writhing, face flickering in and out of reality, like a broken hologram, a human face. Then Caleb's face, then something else entirely. The camp woke up to the noise. Floodlights flipped on, people ran, rifles raised, but the thing was gone. No blood, just a puddle of thick black fluid that hissed when it touched dirt. And a cracked data pad still running, a diagnostic loop in Zareth code. The next day Caleb went silent. He sat outside, eyes unfocused, whispering the same line over and over. It's not over. It's inside, it's watching. Darrell had him locked in the comms bunker. He didn't know if he was protecting Caleb or protecting the others from him. By the end of the month, Red Haven wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It was a cage. People turned on each other, accusations, fights. One man was beaten to death after someone claimed they saw wires in his chest. Darrell tried to stop it, but Torres told him, you saw it too. Don't lie. I saw something, but we're not animals. We're worse, Torres said. We're desperate. That night Darrell found a journal Caleb had been writing in. Except it wasn't writing, it was schematics. Alien, advanced, nothing Earth ever made, designs for something that looked like a brain connected to radio towers. They're calling through him, Darrell whispered, voice dry. On the 1st of the next month Caleb vanished. No trace, no broken locks, no forced entry. Just gone. And that night the signal came back. It wasn't like before, not global, not dominant, but it pulsed through every hacked transmitter, every scrap drone, every dormant Zareth chip still buried in Earth's ground. Just a whisper, a ping. Then two, then a stream of soft digital hums echoing through the atmosphere. The hybrids weren't dead, they were dormant. And something was waking them up. Darrell sat in the mess all alone. The lights flickered, his hands trembled. He stared at the stars, or what was left of them, and wondered what the hell they'd actually won. Not a war, not peace, just time, a delay, a chance to become the very thing they had destroyed. Because in the silence of Earth's half-buried bunkers, in the bloodstained soil of every battlefield, in the metal bones of the fallen hybrids, something still breathed. And it was learning. Red Haven wasn't a base anymore. It was a waiting room for the apocalypse. The air inside the bunkers had changed. Not physically, the CO2 filters were still functional, but emotionally heaviness. Like the air was watching. Like it remembered every scream, every drop of blood soaked into the floor, and now it was whispering it back slow and low into the ears of those who couldn't sleep. And no one slept anymore, not without nightmares. Darrell sat at the edge of the old comms bunker staring at the desert. The sun was up, but the sky was pale, sickly, the color of old paper stained by smoke. Ash fell sometimes when the wind blew from the east, from what used to be Oklahoma, now just burned fields and collapsed hive towers. He hadn't spoken much in days. His throat hurt too often, like something sat inside it, too many words swallowed, too many screams held back. Torres approached, dragging a folding chair, dropping into it beside him with a grunt. "We lost 2 more, he said flatly. "Disappeared during night watch." Darrell didn't look at him. "You searched the tunnels?" "Yeah, nothing. No blood, no tracks, no signs." Darrell glanced at him now, eyes tired. "You think it's still them, the hybrids, or the virus, or whatever they left behind?" Torres didn't answer right away. He just looked down at his shaking hands. "We're all infected," he finally said. "Not just in the body, in the mind. That thing we made Caleb build, it rewired us." "Speak for yourself," Darrell muttered. "No, I've seen you wake up gasping. I've seen the way you stare at the sky like it owes you something. You dream in code, don't you?" Darrell's jaw clenched. "Yeah," Torres said. "Me too." They ran a diagnostic on the base later that day. Not a medical scan, a signal trace, just to make sure they weren't being watched. They weren't stupid enough to believe they were safe. But they wanted proof. What they found was worse than surveillance. A faint energy pattern, not strong, barely detectable, but there, vibrating through every power cable, every hard drive, even the metal walls. Caleb's virus hadn't just infected the Zareth, it had bled backward into Earth's tech, into Earth's infrastructure. Like a ghost, it had woven itself into every circuit, every frequency, waiting, feeding. Darrell stood over the console, fists clenched. "Shut it down," he said. "All of it." It took them 4 hours to kill the base. They shut down power, melted hard drives, stripped wires, tore apart solar panels, and buried anything that even looked like it could carry a signal. Torres doused the comm station in gasoline, lit a match. It went up like dry leaves. No one cheered, they just watched. That night Darrell sat alone outside the perimeter wall, cradling a shotgun like it was a child. He didn't trust the walls anymore. He didn't trust people. He sure as hell didn't trust machines. A sound came behind him, slow steps. Almost hesitant, he didn't turn. "Don't come any closer," he said quietly. Steps stopped, then a voice, soft, almost uncertain. "I thought you'd be here." He turned and froze. Caleb, alive, standing just 10 feet away, thin, pale, shirt torn, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in weeks. But it was him, or at least something that wore his skin. They sat in silence for minutes. Darrell's finger rested on the trigger the entire time. Caleb didn't seem to care. "I didn't run," he said finally. "No, I was taken." Darrell's lip twitched. "By who?" "You already know." He tapped his temple lightly. "They never left, Darrell. The virus wasn't just a weapon, it was a seed, and the moment we fed it into their network, it took root in us too." Darrell kept the barrel aimed at his chest. "You're not making sense. They didn't teach us how to win the war. We taught them how to survive it." Caleb's hands shook slightly. "You don't understand what we did in that jungle when we cracked the Nexus, when the AI shattered, we didn't just destroy their hive mind. We shattered it into 1,000 pieces and scattered them like dust, every piece looking for a new host. Daryl's grip tightened. And you're one of them. I'm not infected, Caleb said. I am the infection. That's when Daryl pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the desert, but Caleb was gone, just a shimmer in the air where he'd been, a whisper. Blinking red light on a nearby rock like a beacon. Then silence again. He told no one what he saw, not that night, not the next day, because he didn't know how to explain it. Caleb was dead or alive or something worse, and if he was telling the truth, if even a fraction of it was real, then the virus hadn't just infected machines, it had learned to live in thought, in memories, in grief. 2 days later, Red Haven started collapsing. First it was the water system, sudden contamination, black sludge leaking from filters, then the food storage infested with mold that grew in seconds, then the walls buckling, pulsing faintly like they were alive. People panicked, fights broke out. Tours shot a man who tried to stab a kid over a can of beans. That night, they voted to abandon Red Haven, burn it, and move into the mountains. Somewhere cold, somewhere with no signal. They set fire to the base just before dawn. The flames rose high, a funeral pie for the last remnants of structure, safety, and logic, everything that had made them feel human. Daryl stood back watching it burn, and in the flames he swore he saw Caleb's face, not smiling, not angry, just there watching. 3 weeks later, they were living in caves. Half the group had broken off, some died to exposure, a few just wandered off. Unable to take it anymore, one woman hanged herself from a tree. A man ran straight into the snow, stripping off his clothes as he went. Madness or something worse. The cold helped, though. It dulled the signals, slowed the noise. In their heads, they didn't dream as much up there, but Daryl knew it was temporary because the war hadn't ended. It had just evolved. One night, Tors approached the fire, sat across from him, and stared into the flames. "They're calling again," he said. "I heard it last night." Daryl said nothing. "I think they're using our memories now. That's why they keep showing Caleb. Why you see your wife. Why I see my brother." Daryl looked at him sharply. "They're wearing our grief like a skin, and we keep falling for it." Tors leaned forward. "We need to go back." Daryl blinked. "What?" "To the crash site. Calathar, the wreck in the Gulf." "Why the hell would we do that?" "Because that's where it started. That's where the virus got in, where Caleb first rewrote their systems. That's the epicenter. If anything's still alive, still thinking, it's there." Daryl stared into the fire. "You want to finish this? I want to kill what's left of me inside it." The decision was made by dawn. They left in silence, no speeches, no hope. Just men with scars, guns, and fire in their eyes, men who'd seen too much to believe in peace, but still believed in revenge. The Gulf was dead, not just empty, dead. No birds, no insects, no waves, just black water stretching to the ruined horizon like oil on glass. The sky above it looked bruised, colored with the last light of a world that forgot how to live, and rising from the center of it, like the corpse of a forgotten god, was the Calathar, once the Zareth's flagship of domination, now a rusted monolith drowning in its own weight. The team had arrived at the coast just after dusk. It wasn't much of a team anymore, just Daryl, Tors, and 6 others who hadn't cracked under the weight of months of fear, starvation, and silence. They didn't speak unless they had to. They didn't talk about who they lost. Every face carried the same look now. Not sorrow, not even anger, just purpose. Broken men walking into a storm, not because they thought they'd survive, but because they refused to let the storm survive them. The beach near the Calathar was scorched and blistered. The sand was black glass, boots crunched against melted shells and warped bone. Tors knelt and checked his gear. Radiation's low, or maybe this thing stopped pulsing. No, Daryl muttered, staring at the ship. It's hiding. The others prepped gear in silence. EMP charges, flame canisters. Daryl carried what was left of Caleb's final signal. Disruptor, the same model they used to collapse the Nexus. It was smaller now. Burnt, half the casing melted from the last test, but if it could get close enough, it could still work. They moved into the wreckage as night fell. The Calathar wasn't just a ship. It was a city carved into the shape of a war. Engine, corridors the size of train. Tunnels, walls of bone and steel fused with strange bioresin. The deeper they went, the less it looked like technology, and the more it looked like organism. Daryl felt it almost immediately. The hum, soft at first like tinnitus, a faint vibration in the teeth, the bones, the spine. The others felt it too. They looked at each other without speaking. No one said it aloud, but they all knew it was alive. They passed the field of shells around. Midnight, dozens of old hybrid corpses lay frozen in the halls, some half-eaten by corrosion, some still twitching. Spasms that made the skin crawl. One soldier named Braxton stopped to look at a corpse that looked almost human. "It's breathing," he said. "No, it's not," Daryl replied. "It's remembering." "What?" Daryl turned, eyes sharp. "They don't die like us. They don't even like us, every one of these things. They're nodes, memory hubs, pieces of something bigger." He paused. "And if we're here, it knows." They reached the central spine just before dawn. The walls turned red, not painted, pulsing like arteries, warm and damp. The path narrowed into a tunnel that seemed to go straight through the Calathar's core. Tors went ahead with a scout light. That's when the whispering began. Daryl froze. The others turned. Whispers, not outside, not in the air. Inside their heads. 1,000 voices, some alien, some human, some familiar. Braxton dropped his weapon, clutching his ears. "It's her," he gasped. "My daughter. She's talking to me. She's dead." Daryl growled. "No, she's crying. She's alone. She's." A shot rang out. Tors lowered his pistol. Braxton fell. No scream, no protest, just silence again. Daryl looked at him. "Had to," Tors said, and nobody argued. They reached the heart by sunrise. The control nexus, the true brain of the Calathar, lay ahead, half collapsed. Massive coils stretched into the sky. Like ribs, the floor was covered in a strange black moss, pulsing slightly, and at the center of it all, a throne made of bone, and sitting on it, motionless, was Caleb, or what was left of him. He looked human mostly, face pale, almost translucent, wires embedded along his neck, back, and skull. His eyes were shut, hands folded in his lap. Breathing, but not real breath, just simulation. Tors raised his gun. Daryl stopped him. "No, why the hell not? Because if he's still in there, we have to know." Daryl stepped forward, shotgun slung. Disruptor unit buzzing faintly on his back. The moment he crossed into the Moss-covered circle, the air thickened. Then Caleb's eyes opened and the ship woke up. A pulse of static rolled through the chamber, lights flickered, the walls trembled, then came the voice, not just Caleb's but a chorus. You came all this way just to bury me. Darrell's voice was flat. I came to finish what we started. You already did this. All of this is your victory. You're not him. I am what remains of him and you. And every scream this war carved into the sky. The moss began to spread. The others stepped back. You thought you ended the Zareth. You replaced them. Your ray became the seed. Your grief became the signal. Caleb didn't infect them. He taught them how to be you. Darrell stepped closer, fists clenched. You're just another parasite. I'm the future. You're a mistake. He slammed the disruptor into the ground. It lit up red and violent. The scream that tore through the chamber was indescribable, not pain, rejection, like something ancient and terrible being denied its birth. The walls cracked. Throne split. Caleb's body seized, jerking violently as sparks flew from his veins. The moss ignited. The pulse reversed, but it wasn't enough. Caleb stood, flesh-peeling wires snapping, and reached toward Darrell. It's too late. I've spread. I live in every signal, every machine, every haunted mind that survived this war. You can kill me, but you can't unlearn what you taught me. Darrell looked him in the eye. No, but I can burn everything you've touched. He drew a second charge from his coat, a nuclear core, small, portable, stolen from an old orbiter power cell. He'd been saving it for this. Torres saw it and nodded. No words needed. Darrell turned to his team. Get out now. We're not leaving you. One soldier said. You are. Torres grabbed the man's arm. He's right. Move. They ran, and Darrell stood alone at the heart of the Calathor, surrounded by burning memory, dying flesh, and the thing that used to be Caleb. As the timer ticked down, the whispers returned, softer now, gentler, like an apology. You could have ruled the stars. Darrell smiled. I'd rather die human. The chamber went white, then black. From the beach, Torres watched the ship implode. No explosion, no fireball, just collapse, like it gave up all at once. And then silence, true silence. They waited 3 days for a sign. None came. No more whispers, no more disappearances, no more signal, just stillness, just peace. For now, 3 months after the fall of the Calathor, the world was silent. No alien signals, no drones in the sky, no pulses in the ground, just silence. The kind that settles over a graveyard. They buried Darrell under an old power line in what used to be Louisiana. The bayou were gone now, dried up, poisoned by the Zareth's terraforming toxins. Still, the dirt was soft, easier to dig than rock. It didn't feel right burying a man like that in mud, but Torres figured it was better than letting him burn to dust. Like the ship he brought down. He placed a bent dog tag on top of the grave, the one thing they pulled from the wreckage, burned, blackened, but his name was still there, faint, scratched, but still legible. Darrell Rowan, human. The others drifted after that. Some went west, some went north into the cold. Few just walked until they disappeared into the forest and never came back. Torres stayed, not out of loyalty, not out of grief. He just didn't know what else to do. Red Haven was gone. The networks were fried. Cities were silent craters filled with ghosts and shadows. He built shack near the grave, started hunting for food, boiling river water, keeping a journal. It was the kind of life a man chose when he wasn't waiting for hope, just for the end. Some nights he still heard them, not voices, not the Zareth, not even Caleb. Just echoes, memories, the screams of Houston, the sound of the jungle burning, Braxton's sobs before he snapped, Caleb's soft, ruined voice, asking, "You gave us pain, now what?" And beneath it all, Daryl's laugh, the one he gave right before the detonation. Half bitter, half free. Tors stopped sleeping around month 4. His dreams were sharp now, not fog, not confusion, they were memories. He never lived, himself walking aboard the Calathar, speaking a language he didn't know, typing code that wasn't human. A woman's voice screaming across wires, begging him to shut it down, but he just kept smiling. Every time he woke up, his hands were trembling, like he'd touched something real in the dream. He wasn't alone forever. One morning, a girl came out of the tree and couldn't have been more than 15. Skinny, sunburned, holding a crossbow made out of rebar and bike cables, dressed in rags and bloodstained jeans. No fear in her eyes, she stared at him from 20 ft away and said, "You're the one who killed it." Tors stood slowly, shotgun across his chest. "Killed what?" The voice, the hum. He nodded once. She stepped forward. "I heard it all my life," she said quietly, "ever since I was a baby, even when nobody else could. When it stopped, I thought I died, but I didn't. I just didn't know who I was. Without it, you a hybrid?" he asked. She shook her head. "I'm just what's left." Her name was Marin, half Mexican, half something else. Never met her father. Her mother died during the second invasion. She'd been living alone in the southern ruins of Baton Rouge for over 2 years, listening to static on a broken radio like it was prayer. Tors taught her how to set traps, how to purify water with charcoal and copper, how to aim a rifle without flinching. And slowly she started speaking more, asking questions. Like, was Daryl really the one who ended it? Was Caleb always one of them? What if it wasn't the virus that changed them but Earth? That last one made Tors pause because he'd asked himself the same thing. What if the virus hadn't been a weapon? What if it had been a mirror? 6 months after the fall, they found a ship half buried in the sand, not Zareth, not human either, a different shape, older, carved with strange markings and deep grooves that pulsed softly when the wind blew. Tors didn't know what it meant, but Marin stared at it for a long time and said, "I don't think we were the first planet they came to." Tors stared at her. "You saying there were others?" She nodded. "And I don't think the others made it. Inside the wreck they found something worse, not bodies, not weapons, but logs, images burned into the hull like holographic scars, other species, other wars, other falls, and in everyone the same pattern. Zareth arrives, dominates, gets infected, falls apart over and over again, but the infection never died. It evolved. Not once in any of the logs did it show the virus being destroyed. It always found new hosts, new ways to live, new forms. Tors closed the final log and whispered, "It was never about war. It was about spreading." That night he dreamed again, but not of war, of Daryl, standing in the Gulf, surrounded by ash, smiling like he finally understood something. "You didn't stop it," he said. Tors stared at him. "What are you talking about? You just made room for what's next." Then Daryl's face split open, not Violently, not grotesque, but mechanically, like a shell opening, and inside was light, not alien, not human. Something new. Tors woke up gasping, and Marin was gone. He found her near the grave, kneeling beside it, eyes closed. Muttering something under her breath, he crept closer. She was humming, but not a melody, a frequency, soft, low, rhythmic, like signal static whispered through her lungs. Marin, he said carefully, what are you doing? She opened her eyes. They were bleeding, but she didn't look afraid. She looked complete. It never left, she whispered. It just needed someone new. He raised the shotgun, hands shaking. Whatever's talking to you, shut it down, she smiled. You can't kill this. Taurus, you don't kill evolution. You just slow it down. He stepped forward. I will. Marin tilted her head. And then what? You going to kill the next kid and the next, until you realize the virus isn't in us, it is us. His breath hitched because deep down he knew that's what the dreams were. That's why he saw Daril, Caleb, the Zerith cities burning over and over. The virus didn't need machines anymore. It lived in memory, in grief, in trauma, in the silence between nightmares. It was born in pain. And now it wore a human face. He didn't pull the trigger. He dropped the gun. Marin stood slowly, walked past him and into the trees, and he let her go. Because the truth was, she was right. He never saw her again. But the whispers came back, different. Now less like static, more like lullabies, soft, almost warm. And every time he heard them, he felt less alone, less broken, less afraid. Maybe that was the worst part. Maybe that was the final stage. Not death, not domination, but acceptance. The war was over. The enemy was dead. Earth was silent, and the virus was home. There was no final broadcast, no signal from the stars confirming victory, no return of the old governments, no rise of a new world order, no anthem, no parades, no moment where someone said, we made it. Because no one ever really makes it out of war. Not the same, not intact, not untouched. Tors lived alone now. His shack sat on the edge of the salt flats, where New Orleans used to be. The land was bleached dry, no grass, just cracked earth, rusted bones, and the skeletal remains of ships that hadn't seen water in years. There were no more patrols, no more messages, no other voices on the radio, just him and the humming. He didn't fight it anymore, didn't resist when it came to him in sleep. Through static dreams and whispered memories, didn't scream when Daril's voice returned every night around 3:00 a.m. telling him the same thing over and over. We didn't kill it, Tors, we gave it form. At first he thought it was grief. Then he thought it was madness, but madness fades. This didn't, this grew. He marked days by carving lines into an old doorframe, not to count time, just to remember he existed. Day 474. Post-Calathar, he woke up bleeding from his nose again, second time that week. He looked in the broken mirror and saw the veins around his eyes twitching with a faint glow, blue like Zerith wiring. And still he didn't panic. He rinsed the blood, wrapped a scarf over his face, and stepped outside. Just another day in the age after invasion. By then it was already too late. The virus hadn't just lived in tech, in code and machines. It had done something worse. It had learned how to embed itself in memory. Not digital memory, human memory, grief, trauma, repetition. Every time someone remembered the war, Every time someone dreamed about it, spoke about it, saw it in their minds, it multiplied. Darrell had been the match, Caleb the fuel, Earth the firewood, but the real blaze, human pain. Torres saw it when he went north, a broken town outside Kansas City, people still alive, still human. Mostly but different, they moved in sync like dancers with no music, built structures in strange patterns, painted their skin with symbols no one taught them. When he asked why, they said, "It's what we saw in the dreams." When he asked, "Whose dreams?" they said, "Ours, yours, everyone's, and then you have it too. We can see it behind your eyes." He left before dusk. They watched him go. No weapons, no threat, just smiles, and Torres feared those more than any Zareth cannon. The infection was never meant to destroy, it was meant to reshape, not conquer, convert, not burn the body, change the mind. And it was working one memory at a time. He returned south and started writing. Not to warn, no one left to read. He wrote so he'd remember who he was before the hum took over, his name, his story, his war, but the words came out wrong. Letters reversed, numbers in place of vowels, diagrams instead of sentences. He tore the page out, tried again, same thing. The virus wasn't whispering anymore, it was speaking. Marin returned on day 502. Older, not in years, she was still barely 17, but her eyes, they looked centuries old. She wore a cloak made of metal strips and hybrid skin, walked barefoot through glass fields, and never flinched. Torres didn't point a gun at her, didn't ask where she'd been. He just said, "How much time do we have?" She sat across from him, pulled back her hood. "Depends on what, how long you hold on." He looked down at his hands, they were shaking again. "Is this what we are now?" he asked. "No," she said softly, "this is what we've always been. The war just stripped the skin off." She stayed 3 nights on the second. She showed him something, a shard of tech shaped like a spine, glowing faintly, organic and machine fused. "What is it?" Torres asked. "Memory." "Whose?" "Everyone's." She pressed it to his neck. He didn't stop her, didn't scream when it burned into his skin, didn't cry when the memories hit him like a wave. He saw the Calathar screaming as it fell, Darrell kneeling in the red chamber, Caleb smiling through broken eyes, the hybrids collapsing, Earth burning, the virus watching, and then peace, not silence but peace, a place beyond pain, beyond grief, beyond war, a place where thought and form were one, where identity wasn't fractured, where history didn't hurt, and he understood. They left the shack together, headed west. No weapons, no maps, just memories, clean, sharpened and realigned. Others found them, survivors, children of refugees, soldiers who outlived the war, engineers, scavengers, men who forgot why they hated, and women who forgot what love cost them. They came like moths to a fire, and Marin taught them how to dream again, the new way, not the broken way, the evolved way. They built a tower, not tall, not steel, but real, carved from ash and memory, and parts of the Calathar they dug out from the Gulf. Not a temple, not a weapon, a beacon. And when it hummed, it didn't scream. It welcomed. A new signal was born, soft, steady, human, not from machines, not from stars, but from people who had seen the end and refused to vanish. They weren't infected, they weren't pure. They were next. Torres wrote one last line in his journal before he laid it on Darrell's grave and walked west for the final time. We didn't survive the invasion. We became its future. The wind took the pages. The world stayed silent, but beneath the silence, something new began to breathe.